This is a remote location. I'm in Huntsville, Ontario. We've been out motorcycling most of the day today. We made our way from Blind River today. Have you ever played there, Sean?
Oh, yes. I played Blind River a bunch of times.
I hard to imagine that there's a bar in Blind River that anybody could play.
All I remember it being kind of a neat bar, but I remember the apartment that we stayed at had so many friggin' house flies. It was just ridiculous. And we played there like, I want to say in July or August, and it was so hot.
Wow. Can you share this to the Indie Tunes page
Yeah, I could try.
and share it to Barstools and Bandtalk if we get some people online here? Tonight we're going to talk about stuff that's been happening in Spotify. Stuff that's given Sean and I reason to pause with Spotify and some grief there as well. Also, the implications of AI on people's music. Before the show, Sean and I were talking about this whole business of backing tracks, which we're not going to delve into a great deal tonight because I think everybody's sort of exhausted the take on that.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Well, I mean, it's to the point where the only people it matters to are the people that it really matters to, and everybody's got their own opinion about those things. And there are so many different interpretation of what constitutes a backing track. I guess the thing is, it would have to be about, are you talking about apples and apples, or are you talking about apples and oranges?
Well, this has been going on for a couple of years, and I mean, every so often it rears its ugly head. And here's a quote that I found from Eddie Trunk from 2022.
Okay.
So basically, he was talking about somebody using backing. Falling in Reverse. So this band, Falling in Reverse, had to cancel a show because their laptop got missing. So basically, this is astonishing. First, I heard about this. I thought it was a joke to wind me up. How much longer are fans, promoters, media just going to accept the epidemic of live rock shows not really being live? Paying your hard-earned money to see a band play live that's not truly live. And there are countless bands in 2022 that hone their craft and still play live. Tons, new and old, including the one that subbed for them in their slot, Jackal. No laptop, need it, there. This is just unreal, but at least I give them credit for being honest. Wow, I'm closer than ever to launching my own band, and I can't even sing or play a note. Simply amazing. That last line to me is simply amazing because it's funny how, and I love Eddie Trunk. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
He is a legend in media. I was reading something today where I didn't realize his show used to be on the Boneyard, which became Ozzy's Boneyard. And Sharon Osbourne did not like him, so he got bumped over to Hair Nation, and he didn't like the fit. But
Right.
the fact that he doesn't play and the fact that he's so opposed to it just kind of makes me laugh a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Eddie Trunk is that again, he's a radio personality, right? He's not an actual performer, right?
Nope.
And I honestly that people that actually perform in music have, I think, more credibility in terms of their interpretation of what goes on. I mean, you know how this goes. You go to you play a live gig, and you can tell every musician in the audience because they're the ones there with the folded arms,
Yep.
right? And they're the ones that are going to tell you every mistake you made on that track when you played it.
Yeah, they don't tell me because I don't care. And it was funny because I played a show. I played a show on the weekend, and there was a lot of musicians out, and everybody was really cordial. Like everybody was supportive, and there was no backbiting. And I mean, you don't know what somebody says when they leave the venue. Whatever, it's everybody's entitled to their
Right,
opinion.
but the reason that I think that would be in your particular case, you're not that guy. You're not the guy that goes out and backbites other people, right? Uh, you're
It
not
would
a guy
have to.
that.
Well, I've had nights where it's been very very hard for me to not do that, only because it's because what I'm hearing kind of uh, flies in the face of what would be considered good.
Sure.
And that's not to be insulting. I mean, I always say if you get up on stage in front of somebody, my hat's off to you. But I don't try to go to court and represent somebody in court. So
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. We played June 22nd, one of only 2 gigs we ever play all summer long live as a band. And of course, we learned a bunch of cover songs that, we blew the dust off those cover songs that I haven't played for eons. And we did our best, in terms of representing those songs. Now, the people that were in the audience, none of them were musicians. And every single one of them would come up and say, "Oh, we really appreciate it. Really like the song. We really like what you did with the song. We really enjoyed it." And at the same point in time, we're kind of beating up ourselves because we're like, "Yeah, well, we didn't quite play it the way we would have liked to have played it. Maybe the tempo was off. Maybe this was off. Maybe, the phrasing for the vocals was off where I would have liked it to have been. You know, but you only get one chance to play that. That's it."
Yeah, but it's kind of like playing a wedding because I always have to remind myself and remind the band it's one gig for us, but it's a very special time for the people that you're playing it for.
Exactly.
Right, so you have to be mindful. So
Yep.
on the one hand, you try to do a good job, but when you're playing bars and you're playing venues like that, you can't be on all the time.
That's right. And the whole thing is, getting back very quickly to the backing track thing. There are umpteen different arguments about that, and the question is, what do people constitute as a backing track? Because there's so many different types of backing tracks that artists can use. Everything from a full performance to orchestration fill out to make the sound bigger. So it really, I don't know if everybody, when they're talking about backing tracks, is talking about the same thing.
Maybe not, but I mean, it's always, and I know this from being picked up a number of times on certain sites that post podcasts and interviews. You might have 20 minutes of very good dialogue about the project and 30 seconds about a backing track, and that's what they always run with. And the problem that I have is like, blah, 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 it says backing tracks are stupid. So it's like whoever's doing it, they're the subject matter expert, and they're the absolute knower of everything. So if you don't agree with them, you're stupid. And it's just such a stupid, to me, it's just a dumb argument because it's a skill set that people don't realize if you haven't done it. It's not easy if you haven't done it before.
If you're not playing to a backing track properly, it's going to be very evident.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. I mean, I was at a very famous band's concert a few years back at Molson Park. And I started Molson Stage, and now it's called Budweiser Stage in Toronto. And it became very evident that the band was using backing tracks, right? There were times when the singers were nowhere near the microphone, and there were vocals coming out of the front of the house.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember in the 90s opening for it. So Canadian music back in the 90s used to be a signed band, didn't have a choice. The record company told them, this is what you're going to do.
Yep,
because
exactly.
They wanted the songs to sound exactly like the record. And I remember opening for a band at the Misty Moon in Halifax. I will not say who they are, but they were an amazing band. And I remember hearing the vocals coming out front, and somebody's like, yeah, they're tracks. And then I went behind and I listened to the vocals in the monitors that were the live vocals. Right. And they were just as good in the monitors as they were out front. They didn't have a choice. The record label said, boom. But let me tell you something. It made them sound amazing. It really did.
Here's the difference now between, artists that are with record labels and artists that are no longer with record labels and are considered independents. Eric Clapton, for example, right? If you come to my shows, you're never going to hear me play the song the same twice, and I will never play it the way it was played on the album. That was a one-off. Yeah. And I'll never play it exactly as it was played on the album. So if you're coming out to my shows, expect to hear something different every time you come out. I will never play the same solo twice. Right? And he cites various reasons why that might be so. He said, for example, I take different drummers and different bass guitar players with me on every tour. And depending on the feel of the evening, that song is going to take on a different feel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've been to concerts where here's our number one hit, and they play it, and they just decide that we've been bored with it for all these years, and they decide to do like a jazz version of it. And yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate. So I guess I get what he's saying, but is that more for the artist, or is that more for the audience? And
Well, I think at the same point in time, I think the artist at that point in their career has said, "Look, I've already paid my dues. I played things the way the label wanted me to play it for all those years. Now it's not just about playing my music for the fans. It's playing the music for myself because I don't want to get up there every night and play it exactly the same way every time because it just becomes rote memory. It's not taking any skill for me to play it the same way every time. When I play it different and put my spin on it that night on how I feel, um, I get to experience the song differently, and so do my fans. And if they're loyal to me, Eric Clapton or whoever it is, then it's not going to matter to them how I play the song the same way as whether I played it to a backing track or not.
yeah, I don't know. That's kind of
You can use the same argument.
I suppose, but then do the concert for free. Because hey, Eric, love ya, but I want to hear Layla done like Layla, not like Eric Clapton's.
But you can use the same argument for playing the song with your own feel or playing it with a backing track. That's all I'm saying. And
I suppose.
again, like I said, I don't want to beat this thing to death because I think Eddie Trunk and a few other people are. Um, but you mentioned something that someone said about I've never played music or whatever, and now I can become a musician because I can play the backing tracks,
Well, that was
and
Eddie
that's
Trunk.
and that's that whole argument about AI, right? Now you've got non-musicians who can actually make music making AI and make it sound like it's an actual musician who's actually made the song.
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I take as a form of flattery that some people don't is when you're doing something and then somebody copies it because they think, oh, he's doing it, it must be easy. And so I never get too upset about it. And here's why: because typically when that happens, there's a shelf life for the person that thinks it's too easy because they get frustrated and they stop doing it. And I can say, I'm going on my fourth and a half year of doing this and being frustrated. How are you going to do it in your fourth and a half week? So,
Right.
the AI thing to me is, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know where to start with that, to be
I
honest.
think there's definitely limitations to that, and limitations to where it should be taken. Unfortunately, the thing is that everything is taken on this sort of artificial um, process of creation. And now people that are using AI to create music consider themselves creators when they're not actually creating anything. They're using something that's already there to imitate art. There's a difference between making art and imitating art, and only those who have the satisfaction of actually writing, arranging, and performing songs know the difference, right?
Yeah. But I mean, we're now in a world of, and I did not know until yesterday what this hawk talk thing was. I had no idea, and then somebody told me, and I saw the video, and I'm like, okay, wow, that's pretty lame. And then I saw this morning that she just got signed by some huge marketing agency to market her to do what? I don't know. So it's like the business of getting famous for doing nothing is alive and well, right? So why not? I guess in a sense, I think probably
I
how
mean,
everybody looks at it.
we kind of live in the world of anything goes. And I mentioned this to you before is that, you know, I really don't believe in the mentality, and this is my own personal view. It has nothing to do with what I think about anything else or anybody else's music. So this is a non-judgmental thing. It's more of a personal preference and a viewpoint. Is that is that you know you're imitating art when you're making something that's not really yours in the first place. And there's a difference between imitating art and actually making art.
Yeah, and I mean, again, back to the geez, it's he's doing it. It must be easy. I mean, a friend of mine shared with me, and I had heard this. I don't remember the exact words, but it was an old poem of basically, First they came for the communists, and I said nothing. Then they came for the Jews, and then basically they came for me, and there was nobody to fight for me. And I guess what I'm saying is these people that are creating this technology, oh yeah, I'm getting rich. It's all well and good. Well, guess what? Guess when somebody comes along and creates something that's going to get rid of you, because that's kind of what's going on, and that's kind of what people are trying to do, right?
Well, and that really, the whole mentality about this whole creativity thing is sort of flies in the face of what Daniel X said about um, artists having zero investment in creating music. Because if you can create music with AI, where's the sweat equity in that?
Well, and I mean that's right. And here's the thing: a statement by a businessman who isn't a music creator, who basically is seeing um, all this stuff created by people that don't know how to play instruments and sing, right? So I mean
Right.
that's what he's basing it on, and he's got to be licking his lips, going, "Hey, we found another way to not pay people." So he's pretty excited about that, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that I mean, you've got now, somebody asked me to comment on Instagram last week when we started doing the show, this series about this. What did I think about Kiss selling their avatars and their music now going to be able to be created by AI? Well, I mean, what does that what does that say to the people that went out for years and years and years to their live shows, who bought their albums, who put their own sweat equity into buying the artist's music, having the tangible, vinyl or CD in their hand, and now um, it's going to be created by some artificial intelligence, and it's not really Kiss; it's imitating
If
who
you're a Kiss
Kiss
fan,
is.
if you're a Kiss fan, you should
Yeah.
not be surprised. You should not be disappointed. You should know. And I'm going to read you this funny meme that somebody sent me today.
Yep.
Superman rescued Gene Simmons atop a burning building. In return, Superman was charged $2,500 for the meet and greet. Right? So
Yeah, they were the only band that used to charge like $2,500, $3,000 for meet and greets. Um, you know, it's. I guess the question is that, are these things going to push music to the point where music actually has no value?
I so I mean, if you look at the way that it is right now, um, the purists that love to still listen, like I had a friend that he went out and he saw this band on the weekend, and I never would have interested me, but he liked to be close and he liked to see the guitar player doing his thing and the drummer doing his thing, and so there is still people that will do that. Um, but unfortunately, you're getting this huge pocket of people that they don't care, man. They just
I remember going out and buying my first Kiss album, you know,
yep,
and and the thing is that I had to take my hard-earned money to go out and buy that album.
yep.
Now, now I can spend $10.99 a month on Spotify, and I can stream that album and 100 other albums in that same month for that $10.99.
Yeah, you can.
So let's say I stream 100 albums in a month, and that's conceivable. You can stream 100 albums in a month. What does that make each album worth?
Uh, I think I would say it diminishes the value more than anything.
Yeah, it makes those albums worth like $1 each, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? It diminishes the value of the music because I'm not putting any sweat equity into it, and I also don't have the tangible. I don't have a vinyl record in my hand where I can hold it and say, this is mine.
Well, I mean, and it's a good point because I say this all the time. Like I use the example of Bon Jovi "Slippery When Wet." So that came out in 85, 86. I was in high school, and you hear "Who Gives Love a Bad" or "You Give Love a Bad Name," and it's like, oh, this is amazing. But I get the record, and I like the second side. I liked every song on the second side. The first side, I didn't love every song on the first side. Um, I had the opportunity to figure that out because I got the vinyl. Kids today don't have the opportunity to figure that out because they go to Spotify and they don't deep dive, man. They just try to find what they like, right?
And what a great album cover. I mean, made on a garbage bag.
Yeah, well, that was out of necessity because the original one was not made on a garbage bag.
No, because they thought that the first one would get censored, and they're probably right. It would have probably got censored, right? So they sprayed water on a garbage bag, and Bon Jovi wrote "Slippery When Wet."
Yep, yep.
I mean, what an ingenious thing for an album cover, and that got them on the map, right?
Well, and I mean, yeah, and you want to have some fun. There's a great Facebook page just called Bad Album Covers. Go check that out because some of them are stinking hilarious. And
I mean, go ahead, Sean.
No, these are covers that were actually released where you're going, what were these people thinking, man?
I remember, the Kiss Alive album, right? Yeah. So we want to talk about, dubs, overdubs. We want to talk about artificial music and about backing tracks. None of those tracks were as they were originally recorded when they were played live. Those songs were all digitally remastered. They were remixed and remastered with new guitar parts overdubbed into them.
Well, so in Alive, everybody knows the story. The only thing they kept was the drums, and now everybody rips on Peter Criss now, but his was the only performance that was kept.
His was the only performance that was actually live worthy, right? Yep. But the interesting thing about Kiss and what Gene said about them was that, when you went to, and I went to a Kiss live show, I'm sure every song they performed was not perfect, but I wasn't focused on that as a fan. I was focused on the band. I was focused on the show. And the music was still really good, and I still grooved to it, and I had a really great time.
Yeah, and, again, it's funny because I've got a couple friends that are like, oh, you're messing up my feed with too much Kiss stuff. Well, okay, just scroll by it. But, they were pretty upfront about, we want to be a rock and roll brand as well as a rock and roll band.
And they were the epitome of a band who played better live than they played in the studio.
Well, I mean, so there was a book that came out. It was The Making of Destroyer when they hired Bob Ezrin and he was the drill sergeant. They were like Paul Stanley was 26 during that album. Yep. I mean, I remember when I was 26, going like I probably wouldn't have had the maturity to, but and keep in mind they had 3 years of constant touring and traveling around the world, and now they're in with a guy that did Dark Side of the Moon, and I think Peter Criss was the oldest guy at maybe 28 or 29 or something like that. So it's pretty mind bending when you think about it.
Yeah, and you got to think about the business aspect of the whole thing. I mean, Stanley and Simmons were focused right from the get-go about making not only Kiss a household name, but making it one of the most successful acts in rock ever. That was their goal right from the hop. Yep. And they never took their eyes off the prize.
Nope. So this whole Avatar thing, I mean, I don't know why anybody's surprised. And it came out the last show, right?
As a Kiss fan, you shouldn't be surprised. In fact, Gene even alluded to the fact that they may even go far as endorsing Kiss clone bands.
Well, I mean, I said for years, I said 10 years ago, they're going to be like McDonald's. They'd have like a 75 act, and they'd have a 77 act, and they'd have the non-makeup act. And they would just, one would be in Vegas, one would be in Europe. And why not? I mean, some people go, oh, well, that's greasy. It's business. I mean,
tribute acts are some of the most successful live acts out there these days, and they make way more. I mean, the sad part about that, and somebody made the comment about that on social media the other day, is that these tribute acts, a lot of cases, make more money than the original bands did themselves.
So I've got a good friend here in town. His name's Mitch Henshaw, and Mitch plays for a band called Dogs of Sun, who are awesome. And he puts a post up 2 weeks ago, and basically, I'm going to say it, cover bands and tribute bands are wrecking the music scene in Halifax. And I was like, Mitch, here's the thing. You can say it, but, I said to him, and I sent him a note. I was saying that back in '91, and here we are, 2024. Um, and I was part of both, and I've seen the cover money, which is a lot more significant than the original band money.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I've seen the tribute band money. Um, I've seen it from all sides. And the simple fact of the matter is, like it or lump it, um, you know, you're until you blow up, you're going to be a niche thing that you're going to have to, dig deep and build the fan base. But you're going to have a hard time making money doing originals, and it
Well,
sucks. I don't
and,
agree with it, but
and the whole thing is, I mean, you look at guys like our friend Jason Dozer, who's got two really successful tribute franchises going on,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, he does that Excitable, which is the Def Leppard tribute act. He does Van Halen '84, the tribute to Van Halen, both very successful, making tons of money, helping young musicians, get out there, make some extra dough so they can actually go out and play in their original acts that are not making them any money,
yep.
you
And
know?
and it's a shame because there's nothing like I do my best all the time to promote the original stuff as much as I can. And to me it's actually comical if I go and I see a bunch of people that are in a cover band that are like clicky and kind of acting like they rule the world and they're not talking to anybody else. Um,
Exactly.
that's just, to me, is silly. But I will say this about cover artists, because I are one, and I play. It's when you're doing your own stuff, you have to basically cover one artist, and that's yourself. When you're doing covers, you have to cover a wide base. So
Right.
you got to remember that. So yes, you're not playing your own stuff, but it is not like a cakewalk. It's
No,
difficult.
it's not easy at all. Not at
It's not.
all.
Um, but my preference, man, I would love to play originals. Like we started throwing a couple of Michelle songs into the set, and they're going over great. People like them because they're hearing them around town, and it would be awesome to we're going to do two, maybe three at these festivals that we have coming up. Um, and there's a lot of satisfaction when you're doing that. But I get why it's tough to people want to dance. You keep dance floor was
Well,
filled all day long, right?
and it's even, I mean, the whole thing is that when you're playing in clubs and bars, what people forget is that the patrons want to hear stuff that's familiar to them. The
Yep.
stuff that and one of the guys that put this absolutely correct in his in one of his books was Neil Peart when he talked about music being the soundtrack of your life,
Yep.
right? I mean, you can think of all the songs that you grew up on that were the soundtrack of your life growing up, right?
Oh,
And when
absolutely.
and when you hear those songs being played live, it gives you a certain amount of joy. You want to get up, you want to dance, you want to have a good time to it, right? You want to do the whole thing David Lee Roth said, 128 beats a second is the fastest tempo you can play without spilling a drink.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know,
Exactly.
so I mean that's that whole thing. And people used to hate on one of the cover bands I played in because we used to play Sweet Home Alabama, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, it's because the people at the clubs that we play at, they want to hear that song. It's the most requested song ever. And as much as I hate to play the song, I hate to disappoint the people that came out to listen to us.
Yeah, I mean, down here in the East Coast, it was funny because Snoop Dogg played here a few weeks ago,
Right.
and there was an after party that the Trailer Park Boys hosted, and the video was hilarious because there's Mike Smith and the boys up there, and they're pumping the thing, and it's like Sweet Caroline followed by Heave Away, and the look on Snoop Dogg's face is like, what the? And I said to people, I actually am feeling sadness right now that he comes all the way here,
WTF.
and people are going bananas, and I'm going like, oh my god, yeah,
Oh man. I mean, when I think about these things, like and the implications of things like AI and what AI is doing to music, and how it takes away from this whole idea of creativity, I mean, I think there's room for AI within certain things, but if you've got non-musicians all of a sudden creating music, non-performers creating music. that is sellable, that goes again to sort of feed what Daniel X says about no one has any real investment into music anymore, especially when you can create it with AI. Where's the sweat equity in that?
No, no question, no question. And and that's the problem. Everybody's looking for shortcuts and the easy way out, and somebody just sent me a video, good jam band here at this club tonight, and it's like, okay, one of the guys in the jam band is my guitar player, so yeah, it's obviously they're not going to suck, right?
Yeah, and if you've got a great jam band playing, people can get up and sing a song that they're familiar with. It's almost like live karaoke.
Oh, absolutely. And and people, you know, they want familiarity, right? They want the 2 off beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun. That's what they want. They don't want anything different than that.
We used to have a live band in London, Ontario, and they used to do a thing every Wednesday evening because the guys were looking for extra ways to make money, and they had a thing called Rocky Okie.
Yeah, I used to do that in Toronto. They used to call it
Yeah,
Jam-okie, and
yeah, it was
brilliant.
well attended because you could get up and sing your favorite song to a backing band. What's better than that?
No, absolutely, absolutely,
You know,
and absolutely brilliant.
a creative way to use your talent. I mean, here's the thing, though. There's sweat equity involved in that. Even the person singing is putting some sweat equity into that,
No question.
right?
Yeah.
And I mean, for some people that aren't used to singing and getting up in front of people to do things like Rocky Okie or karaoke, that's a big step for them to be able to stand up in front of people and sing a song. And sometimes you discover, oh my God, that person's got a great voice.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I say, uh, anyway, it's funny. So I'm getting there's a jam that's taking place, and there's a guy sending me some information, and I know who's there, and
Right.
he's talking about a certain person who I
I'll
know,
go. Okay.
talking about backing tracks. He used to be the king of backing tracks, and his laptop used to die all the time and stuff like that. So, but I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to say that. I think the hateful comments can go on the bottom. But anyway,
No
here's my point.
names here.
You do every now and again see that jewel in the rough.
I'm going to go to the chat room, see what's going on, if I can read any of this. My chat room is so small. Maybe you could read, see if there's anything going on in the chat room there. I see a few people chatting in here. Good point, Sean McKenna.
Who said that?
Jordan Matchett says that. Good point.
Don't egg me on, Jordan.
Fuck Daniel Eck. Yeah, I believe that. Maybe Daniel doesn't listen to music from anything after 2020 or before 2020. Sorry,
he's a businessman.
pre-2020.
He's a businessman. I mean, I understand. At the end of the day, I've made a conscious choice to ignore Spotify. I didn't say to Ken, I'm not, don't load the tunes because we talked about that. I've made a conscious choice to avoid it for the simple fact that I'm sick and tired of their bullshit. And I don't rarely swear when I do these things, but I've just had it with their nonsense. I've had it with, anyway, I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I'm just going to avoid them.
Here's where for me as a record label it becomes relevant. Yep. And it's only relevant in so many ways. So when it is the largest download and streaming platform, you've got to guess that at least 50% of the people that follow you and follow your music are subscribers to Spotify. So if you don't put your music on Spotify for those subscribers, those people that would follow you otherwise, you're missing out on the opportunity of getting your new music in front of those would-be followers who are maybe going to share it with other people who maybe are on, maybe their subscription to services with iTunes, or maybe it's with Tidal, or maybe one of those other services, or God forbid they're willing to part with $1 a track and go to IndieTunes.com and download the track.
No, absolutely, and and I'll tell you something very, very interesting. I don't want to name the artist because I love the artist and I love what they're doing. But I got asked to give them a hand with a tune that they had that came out a couple Mondays ago.
Okay.
And so it came out first on YouTube, so we shared it, and I
Right.
think it got up to about 2,000 views or something in a couple days. Um, we did the soft release for Michelle's tune that Friday, and
Right.
we had crazy numbers over the weekend, and then YouTube, as they do, messed up, and they're catching up again. But regardless, her numbers are still going up, going up, going up. I went back and looked at the artist that I helped out, and he's less than half of that. And I'm going, okay, well, why is that? And I come to find out that the people that are repping his stuff don't really know what they're doing. Uh,
I think more people should be coming to you for promo for their music because you've got a really good organic social reach, and I can't help but think. I mean, you know, the work that you've done with Michelle's music, for example, has really helped it to grow and get in front of more people. And it's
well,
just the result of doing that has really helped things move forward, right?
um, her music aside, I got asked to take part in two other projects a couple weeks ago, and I did them actually free of charge because somebody came to me and was like, do you know what you're doing? And I was like, I think I know what I'm doing, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure because I wasn't sure it was going to work. So
Right.
it wasn't solely me. I'm going to put that out there. So it wasn't solely me. It was two different artists who had PR teams that had asked me to help. And between two artists and then a third one that I kind of helped out, there was almost 200,000 streams in about or not streams, sorry, YouTube views in a span of about just over 15 days.
Right.
And one of the publicists came and said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I went to my list of people that I've been building for 20 years, and I went to different sorts of things, and I did what I always do. And well, what is it? It's like, well, I'm not gonna do it for free, right? Which and so that's the thing. So I think sometimes what happens is people are like, yeah, we're gonna get Sean to help, and then when they don't want to pay for it, they get upset with me. But it's like it's intellectual property that it's taken me a long time through working with people and through listening to people and through getting tips with people that are actually big in the business. It's not me; it's me listening, and so I
And, and
pre
and it's you networking too. I mean, you do an awful lot of networking.
I do, and sometimes people um, uh, poo poo that. My whole life is networking. Anything that I'm good at, that's been good, bad, or otherwise, has been through networking.
I'm trying to get the shadow off my face, but my face is terribly red because it's really windburned. We did a lot of riding today. We rode probably over 500 kilometers today, so it was
Nice.
a lot of windburn because there wasn't much sun. We dodged the rain at every turn. I think this today. Um,
Haha.
when you think about what's going on with AI,
Yep.
it's kind of scary when you can hear music that's created with AI that sounds every bit as good, if not more flawless, than some of the stuff that's actually created through the proper process of musicians together in a studio recording a project. Um,
Yep.
what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Um. So from working with people on tracks and doing things like that, I get an awful lot of things that are sent to me that are not real drums. So they're like there's all kinds of apps and sites that you can go to that are somebody sent to me one time. Oh, I got Steve Smith playing on my track from Journey, and it's like it's actually physically Steve Smith. The AI, the drum parts and whatever. Um, and so you get them, and you almost go like, "What am I going to add to it?" Like really, but they want the human element, right? They want
Right.
somebody that's physically behind the kit. And so I think that what ends up happening a lot of times, and here's where I see it too. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think AI is teaching people to not how to to not do a good job at producing because I've dealt a couple times with people where they don't know how to do mix drums in the studio because there's the kick drum's being picked up by the snare drum, and well that's kind of how it was always done. And they're used to that scrubbed out sound that you know what I mean.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing that I think where the flaw exists with some things like AI, for example, is that there is no human element in it at all. I mean, AI only does what you tell it to do. It's coached by your human process of telling the AI what it is you're particularly looking for, but it loses that human element of like you said, the bleed through the microphones, which is a normal part
Yep.
of that recording process, especially if you're doing live recordings off the floor. I mean, the only live recordings off the floor that have sort of that scrubbed out feel to it is when you have every musician in their own separate studio
Yep.
or their own separate sound room recording everything, but then it takes away from that human interaction part, which from my perspective, I see that as a highly important part of making music. And I'll qualify that point. When we played on the 22nd of June, and this is again someone who's a non-musician commenting on our performance. He said, "What really amazes me about the four of you guys is that I watch the way that you communicate with one another and the way you put these songs together. And I see the hard work and effort that you do to coordinate your activities."
Yeah, and you know what? That's a dying because so we rehearsed last night and we rehearsed. We're playing this weekend, but we rehearsed for a show that's taking place next weekend. And I left some of my stuff at the club that I'm playing at, and so I just went and listened. Um, and it was like, okay, here's five people, six when you put Michelle in there, that are singing vocals flawlessly, no tracks, all their parts, and I'm sitting there going, nobody. Well, and it's not that nobody does it. Nobody has the opportunity to do it anymore. They don't have space. They might live in apartments. You know, different schedules. It's not like they don't want to. They just don't have the ability to do it. And that's, I think, something that's really missing in today's day.
Yeah, I honestly think that if somebody really was interested in helping musicians, it would be facilitating a jam space where artists could perform and hone their craft together and rehearse in one space together, um, where it's sort of like a plug and play situation. Now, some artists don't mind paying a fee to be able to, pay the bills and all that other stuff to be able to have a place where they can do that. I mean, could you imagine going there and just being able to do some fine tweaks on a kit and just taking your drumsticks and showing up and being able to jam with your
Oh,
band?
listen, the studio that I use when I don't do tracks here, my good friend Chris Potty, who is an amazing country drummer. He's been in that world for years, and I go to his studio and I bring my sticks and my drum throne because his throne is too high, and I use as a kit entirely. And I just go in. I'm prepared. It's usually one take, and I'm out the door, and it's like stool under one hand and sticks in the other hand, and yeah, and I mean, in Toronto, I've got a friend, Carl Anderson. Carl's been on here commenting every now and again. There's a studio Dundas and something like out at the West End, um, and people go there all the time, and that's exactly what it is. There's backline set up, and they just roll in, and boom.
I feel so fortunate to have my own studio. I mean, the drum kit in my studio is built all around my drummer,
Yep,
right? I mean, he helped me tune the kit. He helped me piece the kit together, right down to the double kick drum, right down to the double kick. We added a ten inch tom, which I had a hard time finding because I wanted to find one that matched the badges on the drum kit.
yep.
I had to go all the way to the UK to find a drum that actually matched my kit. Um, and the same thing for the guitar player and myself. We have our own rigs set up there. I hate disassembling our rigs and taking them out of the studio to play live gig because it means trying to reset them up and recalibrate everything to replicate what we had before we tore it all down.
Well, yeah, and we rehearse. I use my Roland's TD50s, which are amazing.
Right?
Uh, but you got to take them apart, put them in the vehicle, get them over there, set them back up. Everybody's on in-ears. They sound like real drums.
Yeah.
They feel like real drums when you're playing them. But then guess what? When I come back, it's like, I got to set them back up again. And so I get that.
Our bass player likes the rig that I have in the studio better than his own rig that he uses to play live.
Yeah. And,
it's amazing.
It's funny because, like I say, if I'm doing a gig, the day before the gig, I will not practice because I use the V drums for recording, but I also practice on. I won't practice the day before because oftentimes those things sound better than what I get in a bud mix, and so I have to take the day off to basically centralize my ears. And my bud mix is great, but I mean, when you get something though that you sound like you're on John Bonham's drum kit, you know what I mean?
That's right.
It's pretty tough.
It's kind of magical, isn't it?
It's amazing. It truly is.
Yeah. I wanted to touch a base again on Spotify. I know you and I have our own ideas about it. What I find extremely helpful about Spotify is the analytics that Spotify supplies. It supplies some amazing analytics. Aside from all the downsides of what Spotify does, Spotify for Artists supplies some great analytics, everything right down to who's listening to your music, who's interacting with your music, where they're interacting with your music, and it really does help to target markets for artist music, and those are the markets that you really want to push on because that's where the low-hanging fruit exists.
Oh yeah, I mean that's useful, but I mean there's just so many other things that they bring to the table that I don't agree with. That I won't get into. People know it. It'll sound like
well, I mean,
a dead horse or whatever. But
remuneration, how artists were remunerated for their hard work. They're not being properly paid for their sweat equity that they have in their music. That's definitely a problem. Right, I see that as a huge problem. I also think that there's some problems in terms of the way that artists get treated if they're reaching some level of success on Spotify. All of a sudden, if they're reaching some level of success on Spotify, they're accused of getting artificial streams on their music.
Yes.
And here's the interesting thing about that is that Spotify doesn't have to supply any statistics about that at all. All they can say is your music is being artificially streamed. And when you ask where is the music being artificially streamed, they can't pinpoint that. Now you can tell me if they can bean count every single stream on a song, why can't they pinpoint what IP address is artificially streaming the song? And why can't they shut down that IP address?
Right. And
inquiring minds want to know.
Well, they can, because I mean, you put it this way: if you were to send an inappropriate picture to somebody, and they report it to the police, the police would know exactly where to go within minutes.
Of course, they would. And the same thing exists here. I really contend that maybe this is just another way for them to deny.
Totally.
Paying artists their just dues, and it's pittance at best. I mean, we're talking, sometimes as low as a 1/32 of a penny per stream.
Well, and I mean, and the thing is, and I don't want to beat up on them. The whole industry is going the way of make people work their balls off and not pay them anything. I mean, everything from back to the exposure angle to the, the one thing for me that absolutely cracks me up is when you hear a venue, oh, well, this guy's just as good as everybody else, and he's charging less, so we're going to get him. Why should we pay more? Well, because here's the thing, he won't show up if there's a Super Bowl party, and I will.
Yeah, that's like playing at Homer Simpson's bar. I'll pay him back rubs.
Yeah. Anyway, it's so annoying. It's so annoying.
It is annoying. I said we were going to talk about Spotify tonight and how unfair their remuneration system is. I mean, and again, I'll put a plug in for our record label is that our artists earn 75% of everything that gets earned off our website.
Yep.
So if you really want to pay artists what they deserve to get paid, you can download their songs for $1 a track. It's cheaper than a cup of coffee. Lasts you a lifetime. You're not going to piss it out in a half an hour.
No, and that's the thing. And, we had this conversation the other day too, oddly enough, on my page, because somebody vented about it to me, but they didn't want to bring their own name up, so I put it in there.
Right.
Somebody won't pay $10 to go see a band downtown, but they'll pay, $15 to $20 to get into a hockey game. They'll pay $10 for parking, and they'll pay, another $30 for beer, and make a $90 night out of it. But they won't, $10 for a band is too much.
I got a question from Elizabeth Miller. It says, how do you guys feel about the music industry standard of using pitch correction or auto-tuning?
I would say it like this. It's become a necessary evil, because in this day and age, people, here's the example I'll give you. I played a 25-year-old kid the isolated drums of Good Times, Bad Times by Led Zeppelin. I told this story last week, and the kid said, geez, he sounds off. That's called being human. That's called what makes music move, right? And people aren't conditioned to hear that now. It is a necessary evil. I personally would love to hear the flats and the sharps. That's makes it real. The industry doesn't allow it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is that the human frailties that are associated with music that makes music human is that it moves. I mean, even to the point where, I guess the idea of pitch correction could be, using the same argument of playing every song to a click track.
Well, that's a great question, and so I'll also say this: when I record, my goal is to be prepared and go in and do one take. If I get the song done and it's great, and I just did a song a few weeks ago where the whole song was great except I flubbed one thing up and I knew it, and the producer's like, we can fix that, and it's like, guess what? I'm not going to go and do 4 freaking minutes if he can move something around and fix it in 20 seconds. So that's what I did. Is that cheating? I don't think it is. I think that's using technology.
I mean, it's called an overdub. It's been used since the very beginning. The only time that music was ever in its purest form was when you got guys like Frank Sinatra, where they recorded Frank and the whole orchestra with one microphone. It was all done in one take, and so it was the best. It was the best possible live performance. But that meant everybody going into the studio knowing their part 100%,
Yep.
and being able to go there and pull it off. And sometimes they didn't pull it off in one take.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I mean, you look at guys like Elvis Presley, for example, who, if he wasn't happy with the take, he'd be in the studio all night.
Yep.
Take after take after take till he got the take that he was really after. And a lot of people don't even realize how much of a perfectionist he was when it came to recording his music.
I think a lot of this stuff started with Mutt Lange, and hear me out, because he did AC/DC, and there's a legendary story about Phil Rudd basically saying he was going to beat the crap out of him because he wasn't using a click track on Back in Black.
Right. Right.
But his quest for perfection, started with Pyromania, and then the Cars Drive album, and then they go in and do Hysteria. 4 years, and the drummer getting in an accident and all kinds of stuff happening, and that album comes out, and if there was a more perfect rock album in terms of sound and song, I don't know what is. And then it's like he wanted to get into country, and they said, no, you're a rock guy. And he basically said, I'm going to get into country and take the world over, marry Shania Twain, and he did it. My point is, there's countless stories of him having a singer work on one line for 5 hours.
And it's interesting because he made Shania Twain a sensation when she was really when she was a lounge singer prior to that.
Yep.
And if anybody actually saw her perform live, her live performances were not always on par with her recording.
Right, and I would argue probably still aren't.
I would say they aren't. I mean, but the thing is that, irrespective of that, she has a loyal fan base.
Absolutely.
Who follow her irregardless of all those human frailties. Now, then you contrast that with a guy like John Bon Jovi, who, knows that the majority of his fans still expect him to sing like the 25-year-old John.
Yep.
Knowing that because of the problems he had with his vocal cords, he could no longer, perform to that capacity. And of course, there's tons of evidence to support that on the internet. And people were dissing the guy because, oh, he can't sing worth shit anymore, can't do da da da. But he refused to sing to backing tracks. He refused to sing to his own recorded tracks because he felt that somehow he wasn't being true to himself or true to his fans.
I get a kick out of, so in Toronto they have the Fan 590, right? Do they still have that station up there? It's Talk Sports Radio.
What's that called?
It's the Fan 590. It used to be. They might have moved it because it's off AM or whatever.
I don't think so. No.
Anyway, I remember when I was living up there, and they had Elliot Friedman, who's now in Hockey Night in Canada, and he's just the same way. And he'd be talking about some guy on the Leafs that basically we used to call him a bender, where he was useless. And I'm sitting there going, I bet you this guy can't even skate. But like anything with hockey, everybody's got an opinion, and they feel their opinion is valid, whatever. And it's getting that way in music, where what you just talked about, where okay, let's rip on John, who's had a very successful career, made lots of money, but more importantly, made an awful lot of people happy and employed an awful lot of people. But now let's sit there and rip on him. And I've never been in the business. I've never sang, and it's funny how people feel that they can do that when they've never had the experience, the opportunity, whatever. And that is just something that when I get in debates with people, these are things like, I haven't had the success that John Bon Jovi did, but guess what? I played in Blind River. Right? And hey, Mr. Guy that's coming out to see me in Sackville that, is critiquing the fact that I'm using a fan. Did you play in Blind River? Because I played there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the same. It's the same as and I want to make a point here, but I also want to acknowledge people that are watching tonight. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Those of you in the chat room as well. Elizabeth Miller says she disagrees that it's a necessary evil. She says she believes it's sucking the life out of modern recording, and it's impacting her favorite classic rock artists on re-releases. And that's I respect that viewpoint, because I don't think there's any one that has all of the light on this, and anybody who can say 100% it's this or it's 100% that. I think it depends from the angle that you're looking at this from, and are we always talking about apples and apples and oranges and oranges? I mean,
well,
right?
So here's a beautiful thing, and I love that Elizabeth said that, because one of the things that I always talk about, there was a thing that came out today, top 20 drummers of all time, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, they're amazing drummers. But who is there some guy that sits on the top of the thing and it says these are the top 20 drummers because, and what she's doing is she's voicing her opinion, and her opinion should be valued because that's what she's thinking, right? So like we shouldn't go, no, Elizabeth, you're wrong. When I said it was a necessary evil, I just know the way the business works now, and unfortunately, people don't get an awful lot of say in what happens with some of these re-releases.
Exactly.
And that's the unfortunate part. So I mean, maybe if more people like Elizabeth kind of said, guess what, not acceptable, we're not liking it, people would listen. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. That was my necessary evil comment.
That kind of goes the same as the boycott of Loblaws and the boycott of Spotify. It's only going to take you so far, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, those things hurt the wrong people. I get why you do it. I totally get the spirit of it, and nothing is better than that type of thing. But the guy that's missing shifts and can't make his car payment is feeling it different than the CEO that maybe doesn't get to play around a golf or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and I want to come back to that whole business of playing to click tracks. It is a skill set as well, because not every drummer can play to a click track. Not every guitar player can play to a click track. In fact, guitar players are more notorious than some drummers for being able to play to click tracks, because guitar players typically end up speeding up the tempo if nothing else.
My favorite line: "I don't need to click track. I'll play to you." Will you?
It's an interesting thing, though. Some of the best live rock drummers could never play to a click track in the studio. Hence, session drummers actually played the drum parts on some of the most famous rock albums ever.
I'm going to tell you a very quick story, and I've told you this before, but I'm 22 years old, getting ready to go in with my band to, do some demos. And the guy that was doing it was, you got to play to a click. And it was basically, if you can't do it, we're going to get somebody else. I was terrified because I knew there was a couple people that I knew in the business that happened to, where their faces were on the albums and they were playing live, but they didn't play on the record. And
That's
I vowed,
right.
never me. And I will, hey, if something's coming up and I'm not the guy for the track, fine. But you know what? I'm going to work my ass off to make sure that it's because, not because I didn't do the work. And I learned to do it. And now, I do it all the time. And it's, my hat goes off to people that do it, because it's a skill set that is learned, and it takes a while to learn.
Right. When you play with a click track live, do you ever go off script?
Oh, absolutely. That's half the fun. But the problem is when you get used to it, you can weave in and out of it. And the interesting thing, and I keep saying this, you be playing something, you go, man, I really boned that. And then somebody's got a video that they post it. And it's like, and then you listen to it, and you can't tell. It's just amazing.
What I find most amazing about some of the best drummers, and I consider our drummer to be probably the best drummer that I've ever played with over all the years that I've played music, is that he can lock in a tempo in his head, and he can tell me right away if I start too quick or if I start too slow on the tempo. Because if I start the song with guitar, he knows whether I'm too fast or too slow. And he'll say to me at the end of the song, he said, "You started it too fast." I said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "Once you start it there, that's what I'm locking in on, buddy. And you better keep it right there, because it's going to be hard to slow it down after that."
You know what, though? Well, and I tell you, I've had this argument with a singer that I play with, who shall remain nameless. I don't know if he or she is watching, but where a song will, and it's not like I would count it in, but maybe the click is a little too fast, or somebody starts it before the click starts, and it's fast.
Yeah.
And then the singer's like, it has to slow down. I have been born and bred that if it's going to speed up or slow down, it's not going to be on purpose because I'm messing up, right? So it's like, no, I'll dig in. So as a singer, you should want to not start something too fast, because it's always the hardest on singers.
Well, once you decide on the tempo of the song, the best person to count the tempo in is always the drummer.
Maybe. I find the best person to count the tempo of the song is the singer, because especially if you're not playing with a click track, because the singer should know where they feel comfortable, where they're going to get enough breath, where they're going to be able to, project. And
true that. I agree with that too.
In my opinion, as much as people might go, I can't believe you're saying it, the singer is the person that is in charge of everything, right? Because they've got the hardest job, because their instrument is their voice, and that's a very tough thing. And not only that, if you look at the overall scope of the band, depending upon what a band is, the role players have to do a certain thing to support the singer. Even if it's a true band, it's really the singer that most people are focusing on.
Yeah, and I think I think the thing as a drummer, though, when you're in rehearsal,
yeah,
you're going to know if things start too quickly, and you're going to go, "We started that song too quick because the tempo is actually this, not what we started it with," right?
I've always been well, I shouldn't say always, but I'll say the last 20 some odd years, I've been a stickler for tempo. But Mr. Mark Horton is a guy who, if something starts too fast, stop, and lower the beats per minute. And the program that I use, unfortunately, if you put a song in the program, you have to delete it. You can't, or you can manually up and down the tempo, but as soon as you go to the next song, what'll happen is when you go back to the other one, it's at the tempo that you loaded it in at.
Right.
So that's a kind of a pain. But no, Mark's usually the first one. No, stop. Let's go. Let's get the tempo right.
Well, that hour went by extremely fast tonight. I mean, lots of subject matter to talk about. We're going to probably continue on this vein on next week's show, because there's so much content involving the things that we're talking about, and why these things are so important to pay attention to as we move forward. Probably going to be talking about some other things that are important in terms of song production, as well as song publishing, because that's a big part of the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
and why certain things are extremely important if artists want to make sure that they're properly remunerated for all the hard work that they do with their music in the first place.
Wouldn't that be something, eh?
Yeah, right. So let's leave that for next week. We'll talk some more about that stuff. Great having you on the show tonight, as always, Sean.
A lot of fun.
Always great to have you here. Love your perspective on things. You've got a great insight. If you want to watch some really great content, go to Barstools and Bandtalk, Rimshots with Sean on YouTube. Join their YouTube channel. And subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because it's all about independent music as far as we're concerned. Everything that Sean and I do is about supporting independent work. Our tip jar is right there. If you like what we're doing, tip us. It all goes to support independent music, independent art. And we don't discriminate against what artists will come on our label. We do request that the music be well written, well performed, and well recorded, and we put it through a bit of an acid test when we make a decision about bringing artists on the label. So keep that in mind, and you can send your music to indietunz@gmail.com. That's INDIETUNZ@gmail.com. And for me at IndieTunes Records, Sean from Barstools and Bandtalk, Rimshots with Sean. I'm Kenny. You're not. This has been the Indie Show. Have a great week, everybody.